Oh, what's up, Vibe Ranters? We here. We got Ben Balderson. Today's the first day of the tropical Aquarius season, and I'm feeling free and funky fresh. How about you, man?
Oh, just fantastic. Actually, no, I'm not. I feel like shit.
Yeah, it looks like you got beat on by your wife a little bit.
Yeah, Christy, I got mouthy with Christy, and she punched me right. She punched me in the eye over here.
Wrong eye.
Wrong eye. Is this eye? This is the really swolly one. Ah!
Hey, what's up, Lucas?
Yesterday.
Hey,
Lucas. Yes,
are we
sir.
on air or?
Yeah, we just went on, so you popped in like right in the perfect moment.
Really?
Yeah.
I was just telling everybody why I'm so pretty right now. Holy.
Yeah, tell us the story, Ben.
Yesterday I couldn't even see, so I got, I've been using DMSO and we mixed it in the comfort cream and we're trying it out. So I've had DMSO on me and I didn't stop and think about it. And I went out and it's been nice the last like 4 or 5 days. So I went out and cleared a whole bunch of forest and the DMSO, well, I'm also allergic to poison oak and I get poison oak pretty bad. Well, then the DMSO on top of me, it just soaked right in and I'm just driving along and all of a sudden it jumped from like, usually it just starts out as an itch and then it spreads and turns into like a little redness and stuff. And all of a sudden yesterday I'm driving and I have that and I realize I got poison oak and all of a sudden while I'm driving, all of a sudden my eyes are just like, I can't see and I'm starting to see stars and I look and my eyes are just fully swollen up and my whole face and my ears are all swollen. And I'm like, wow, my whole body itches. It's horrible.
Well, it looks like it downsized a little bit pretty quickly.
Yeah, I had to go I couldn't even fuck around. I ain't gonna lie. I went and got a bunch of Benadryl and scugged Benadryl. Jeez.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Holy cow. Yeah, not even gonna lie.
How about you, Lucas? You got any swelling anywhere that's irritating?
No, I don't think I do actually. No.
Me either, except from lifting weights. Ha!
I got a sore shoulder. That's about it. I've been working on that, but I think it's too much hoeing in the garden. That's what's jiggers it up.
Too much hoeing?
He's out hoeing around.
Yeah.
Or not enough hoeing. One or the other.
Yeah, so Lucas, we haven't got to be on cameras together before. This is cool. I haven't been on and I was like, why not bring these two dudes together? That way I can sit back and just watch sparks fly, and not have to do much work.
Yeah,
right.
Fair enough.
That's hilarious.
So introduce yourself to our people because a lot of I think our people know Benjamin, but who are you?
Take it, Lucas.
Yeah, well, I've got a YouTube channel called LC King, and basically I just go through
Rockfin. He meant Rockfin.
Yeah,
he meant Rockfin.
But basically what I do is I apply the galvanic battery or batteries to the world, and that's what the main part of my YouTube's about. And dive into a little bit of Rockfin. Esoteric stuff as well, and lately I've been getting more into the zodiac, stars and all that sort of stuff. So I try and be fairly diversified in what I look at and research. So that's a bit about me, but I live in Australia, Victoria. I've got a small market garden. That's what I do. I'm a farmer. And so, yeah, it's a pretty quiet little town I live in.
Man, living the dream, other than maybe like cooties restrictions, but you're already in the good spot for it, having your own farm. So it's like, what can they do?
Basically, what Yeah, go for it, Ben.
I'm gonna point out that this little dream life Lucas is talking about is in Victoria, Australia. If you're willing to go out and make your own reality, you can make it even in places like that. He's in the worst place in the world right now.
Maybe not the worst place in the world, but pretty rough, I bet.
I'm
away from the cities.
Like better than being inside a volcano.
Right.
Speaking of which, there's been a bunch of eruptions since I think it was Uranus stationing direct. I'm pretty sure I'm getting that right. Does that ring a bell to anybody? I've been looking at, and so is our friend Gabriel, Slick Dissident. We've been really looking at the role of Hephaestus in the mythology as really a demiurge type archetype.
Now he's the blacksmith. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Vulcan
and
in the Roman.
And sort of, yeah, Vulcan, and related to Leo and all that sort of stuff around that area.
Yeah, bro.
I don't know anything. I don't know about the current astrology. I've been way too busy, but I can tell you that off the west coast here, there's been a ton of earthquakes. One that knocked down things in my house, even.
Whoa!
And it was a weird rolling. Like it wasn't just like a shake. It was like a weird rolling. Like you could feel a roll, like a wave. And there's been like in the last couple of weeks, there's just been a whole series of them off the coast outside of Humboldt here.
You remember me talking to you about the earthquake in Melbourne? That was a little while ago now, but like we never get earthquakes or anything like that. So that was a little strange. We just don't know what that was all about.
Yeah, so you know what? We do this thing on here where we have a Telegram channel for Vibe Rant, and people do call-ins and leave us videos and all kinds of stuff. There's some questions in there for you guys. So I'm going to set up my screen share, which I should have already had set up, but you know. Oh, I think I have to save. You know what? Give me just a second because I got to save and download this video.
At some point, Lucas really needs to air out the things that he's been working on right now. Lucas has really been on fire with the research that he's been working on. He's made some real strides in the last couple of weeks, and at some point, he definitely should take some time to air that out.
Yeah, man, I think that's a good idea because we're going to have Lucas on for his own full-blown InnerVerse episode where we spend the whole time just combing through stuff. And by then, I'll have caught up on as much of Lucas's work as I can. Right now, I'm under the gun with a couple other projects, but I have been looking at the Telegram group he's got. And one thing we've discussed like briefly is challenging the idea of the precession of equinoxes. I really like that because who told us about that? Very untrustworthy people. So there's that. And, we could talk about all kinds of things. So I figured by the time we have our talk in February again, there'll probably be a whole nother episode's worth of new research and things to converse about. So I say let her rip, Lucas, and I'll get the video and questions lined up from the call-in group for whenever we have a moment later.
So precession is something that I've been grappling with for a long time. It's one of those things where it's pretty untestable for the common man. And so that's like a red flag to me straight away is like 72 years for 1 degree. I mean, that's a small amount. And then it really came out of applying the battery to the world and going and thinking about the stars and basically this, dome that's basically made out of solid oxygen and those sort of concepts. And it was more to do with, okay, so what if there's no precession and the position of the sun is dictates how we see the stars? So we're sort of flipping it on its head because, I see the stars as being fixed, and this dome, if fixed in the dome, and if they're fixed in the dome, then that dome to me isn't spinning. That sort of when you look at the nature of this solid oxygen and those sort of things, what you see is that it needs to actually be stable for it to do its work in being a superconductor and those sort of ideas that go along with it. So what it was then, it was like, okay, so you've got the sidereal, which is where the sun is. Then you've got this older version, which is, you've got the man, the bull, the lion, and those sort of ideas, which is, you can see them in sort of stone, basically, those concepts. And then you've got the tropical astrology. So these three sort of different approaches, and what I found was just by thinking about it, how someone would go and view the stars and check where they are in the season. That was the sort of the critical point, is like, well, how would you actually go and check the stars to see where you are in the season and what's happening? And the most interesting thing was when I put it into Stellarium and had a look, and it was basically you would go out early in the morning and see which star sign was actually rising before the sun. And so that gives you an indication of where the sun is in its own sign, basically. And then you could go out in the evening and see which sign was following the sun. And so you had these different ways of actually seeing where the sun was, and it was actually a triplicity in a sense. And all these three different modalities, if you like, the old world zodiac, the newer zodiac, which is, or not newer, but the tropical, and then you got the sidereal, and they all function. One basically is, applicable to the morning, where you would go and see the stars before the sun rose. One is applicable to where the sun actually is, and then one is applicable to the stars in the evening that follow the sun. So it sort of all fit together. Those three things fit together, and it sort of shows this idea of precession is, in my mind, it doesn't exist. Hopefully I explained that all right.
Ben, what do you think?
I think Lucas has been absolutely on fire. The system that he's looking at now, it is able to have a 12 divisor, but it actually operates off of an 8 divider, which is more classically what your pagans and heathens and most of your older cultures would have operated off of, was an 8 system. And so it divides it into 8, and then what it really kind of looks like is they took the seasonal cross and added it into the constellations, and it's not supposed to work that way. And then also one of the other things that we're working out and talking about is it really very much appears that there's two different cycles that are happening at the same exact time. And one of them is a growth cycle, and the other one is a recession cycle or a death cycle. And apparently we only look at the one side for whatever reason. So it's very interesting. And then some of the different architectures that he's taken some of this and overlaying it on is just phenomenal.
There's it's interesting, this twin idea, sort of like you see it play out in movies. It's the good guy and the bad guy, and they're basically mirrors of each other, and they're sort of, in a sense, born at different times of their cycle, and one's power increases while the other's decreases. And usually what the hero goes through in the hero's journey sort of thing, and you see it in a lot of movies, is that the hero almost dies. He gets his ass handed to him basically in the movies by the bad guy, and then he's nearly kaput. And then he gets that hope back in him, something spurs him on, and then there's the sort of final fight that happens. and you see this play out constantly in the movies, and it's sort of like this. I guess it's a twin sun idea, or it's a different way of looking at the zodiac, where you have, say, the bad king would be born at the summer solstice and then roll down, and his power grows as it gets into the winter, the height of his power, whereas the height of the good guy's power is basically at the summer solstice, you know what I mean, the midday, and he's born at the winter solstice. So there's a really fascinating stuff that they do with the movies and in regards to these archetypes and zodiacal type things. And it's not just the movies, obviously, but this interplay, and it seems to be based over not just one seasonal cycle, but a few. And I haven't quite worked out like how many cycles they're actually working over and what that actually means. But there's definitely a larger story that goes over a larger period of time that's happening. I don't know if you've noticed that.
So there's a couple of things I want to address there. Excuse me. The 8 instead of 9 kind of makes sense why previous cultures would revere that number, because you've got the analemma makes that pattern, and then in, I guess, gematria, or just like sacred mathematics, non-secular, the 9 is the serpent, or what you slay, because whenever you add 9 to anything, it just returns to what it was. 1 plus 9 is 10, which reduces back to 1, and 2 plus 9, 11. 1 equals 2. So same kind of thing happens with multiplication, where it becomes a 9, whatever you multiply by 9. So it doesn't really add anything in terms of whenever it's crossed with other numbers mathematically. So it's kind of like a number of illusion, and you can't use it to create a neat system of division in a quaternity. You could in a trinity, 333. But anyway, those are some thoughts on 9. Also, I've been deep into re-looking at the work of Dylan Sakosio, his Spirit World series, and in the 3rd book, a huge theme of the book, July's End, is that the angel of death and the angel of life are one and the same, which was claimed by the Hermetic Brotherhood. That basically it's all the archetypal stories, the planetary characters, even ancient kings that are in this way made to reflect mythology, even though they may be claimed to have been historical, are really the sun at different stations of the year throughout the zodiac. It becomes the different characters. It becomes the mother, it becomes the lion, it becomes the virgin, etc., and goes through the whole cycle, becomes Aquarius or Janus. And like you were saying, in the winter half, after the equinox that enters you into the covenant of works, I think is what it was known as, the winter time. That's the fall equinox. That's when the sun becomes like the arch villain, or the angel of death, or Saturn or Kronos eats his children. And then, this vernal equinox, you get the springtime superhero, Christ the Lamb. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, that's right. The same thing that you were saying with the 9, it acts like a 0 in a sense. So it's the central point. So you have 8 spokes around a central point, which would be the 9th point, and it's the monad, or the 0 point. And it's the same with the zodiac. You have 12 spokes around the central one, which is that Polaris and Mercury, and all that singular figure has 12 different orientations, 12 different coats it puts on, in a sense. So that's exactly right. That's that mercurial figure that comes out of that.
Well, that was there was a whole lot thrown out there. Well, the 8, like Lucas said, the 8 as a heathen and in pagans and whatnot, the 8 is the 9 though. We don't use 9 because the 8 is the 9. That's why like Sleipnir has 8 legs, because if you're standing on Midgard, there's 9 realms, but you only have 8 paths that you can take because you're obviously standing on one of those places.
Let me
So
just real
there's
quick
only
go in.
ever
It's like the 9 is 8 around 1. So it's the 8,
Right.
and then the center spoke would be the 9th point.
Right, exactly. Perfect. So we don't even use 9 because our 8 is that. And so like we have and then even when you're looking at like the runes, the 3-ets, you would be the 9th thing in each of those because you're supposed to be going and experiencing each of those runes like Rachel and I are talking about right now, where you can break it down into a life order of things that you do and the life path that you're taking. And so you're that 9th thing. And I like when you're looking at this, I don't think a lot. I think that the sun, that is just a Roman and Abrahamic thing where they're so big on the sun. As I've been studying all the really heavily looking at that aspect of it with a lot of these different cosmologies, almost none of the older cosmologies was the sun a key figure at all. And even in Greek, he wasn't a key figure. Apollo wasn't a particular key figure in any of the stories. I mean, he's kind of just like a side piece in the stories. Rolls around on his chariot of fire, and that's about it.
The problem is the stories that we've been given versus what you can take out of looking at ancient artwork and sculptures. And then some of these characters with very specific symbolism become quite obvious that they were important in different regions. But I think, Mike, I'm working on the idea that it was all zodiacal, and for whatever reason,
Right.
the ruling class or the priesthood decided they wanted to split that symbolism up with different names and different places to keep the uninitiated from understanding the metaphysical truth behind it and stuck in the literalism story. Because there's similarities, like even with the heathen, Thor and Jormungandr is a lot like Michael and Satan, or Hercules fighting the Hydra, Krishna and Kalia, Apollo and Python. Like Horus has a thing with serpents. It just goes on. So, I mean, it's not exactly the same, but I think that there's some kind of like mirroring, whether it's synchromystical and it's just innate to who we are, that we have this hero's journey story that we reflect from the sky clock, or it was manipulated and done in this way to keep different peoples divided from each other geographically.
So what my point is so my thing is it's more like when you're looking at, like Lucas was talking about earlier, the thing that Hollywood really screws up with that is they always try to make the sun guy, the one guy, the winner at the end. And it's not. The one guy doesn't defeat the other guy and all of a sudden everything's peachy forever. The other guy goes in, he becomes strong again. The next one, over and over, the cycle just repeats and repeats. So what you have is then you don't even have one stationary figure. When you look at things, so like even when you look at the Gnostic texts and the Book of Enoch, things like that, even what they're talking about, any of the moving stars, that which includes the sun, were considered the archons or the evil beings. And so the sun wasn't God to them. Now the thing that is stationary and doesn't move and everything else dances around in the sky is Polaris. And we can look at Polaris and everything else, including the fixed stars, which they consider angels, because they're marching to the orders of God, who sits in the center, and they all dance around him. So they're all talking about Polaris. And then when you look at the sun in and of itself, what it does in comparison to Polaris, during just a few hours of the day, depending on what portion of the year you're in, the sun outshines Polaris. It hides Polaris from your sight. Polaris never moves. It never changes. No matter whether it's noon and I can see it, or midnight or I can't see it, or it's midnight and I can, it is right there all the time. So the sun occasionally hides that. So who is the bright shining morning star? Oh shit. Gas. Generator. I'm probably gonna disappear. I will be back. I can hear the generator glugging. No, I switched it over to the other one. But
yeah, you can tap out. We got all three, unless you're good.
The sun in and of itself is what hides Polaris, and then it falls every time. It comes up and it's bright and shining and beautiful. What is Lucifer? The bright shining angel. And then it falls after it hides the sun. It comes up, matches Polaris, which is the North Star. It'll come up, meet that, and then fall every time. So I think this sun thing is actually a fairly recent thing. And I think it's tainted a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts. So because of that, we've really set up this good evil dynamic instead of the way it really was looked at a lot of times is when you like the sacrifice idea, where you go up and you sacrifice the sheep on the one side. That's the perfect seed. The perfect seed gets sacrificed by gaining all the material body that it's going to gain during its fall. During the fall, then you sacrifice that, which is the separating the wheat from the chaff until you get back up to the perfect seed again. So down here's the goat. So the goat's what you had to sacrifice in order to get back up to them perfect seeds again. So it's just this cycle of light and dark. And that's not really the all, which is the thing that is constant all the time, never changing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, Lucas, what do you got? I mean, we just threw a lot around.
Yeah, we did. You know, the way I look at things is it's really through this spectacle of the Trinity. And so, and this really came about because I was looking at the galvanic cell and applying it to the world. So you have the sun and the moon dynamic. Basically, you would have the hot cold, this polarity at play, and then there's a connection between them because you need a connection to get the battery going, basically. And so it was really this Trinity idea that I, really harp on a lot because it is a mechanism of energy movement. And so I think when looking at the old mythologies, I think people should, try and have that in their minds as well, that there is I think they were a much more broader in their approach to looking at it's not just the sun, it's this polarity sort of concept happening, and this mercurial figure, or this joining between these two polarities, this connection, this communication, is the that central point. If you don't have the communication between the polarities, there's no energy. And so when you start to apply this to how they viewed the world, then I think things can really come out of it. And I'm only at the beginning of it myself in trying to understand this, but this is what sort of popped out when I was doing some of that zodiac, as I was explaining those three different types of zodiac layouts, and they're all there. And so, and then the battery sort of stuff. So I think it's a really important concept to keep in mind when actually studying mythology. So
I have a thought about this too, that in terms of the sun symbolism being conflated with the luminaries, the other planets, maybe this is a derivative of, I can't say that I know this for sure, but I'm interested in the growing earth or the cosmic egg world tree cosmological model, where you start with one land that's at the spine of the world, and then that grows out through the maybe electrolysis process. And there's a single luminary that's like an androgen or a Mercury at the middle part of the realm. And then when the event happens, the electrolysis event, something is also splitting those two things apart and creating the power. And I think this is probably because the middle ringland doesn't need a power generator in the same way. It's right next to this core where all the charge is at, and the density of that charge is at. And then as the earth expands and you get another ring out, you would need to have this polarization of these two forces to create the galvanic battery model for that ring, and to generate the toroidal field that is like the frame upon which these things oscillate, the suns and moons. So you have the symbolism in ancient texts of Kronos or Saturn being the sun and being originally like the sun, and that is in a lot of people's work and theories, like Velikovsky and plenty of other electric universe proponents. But perhaps it really was like a sun to the people, and then it got sent further out and became a wandering star. Mars and Venus became the next androgen that then split, and then Apollo and Artemis become the next ones that split. And then now Mercury is in the middle realm, and that's why it's the divine messenger in symbolism. It is a son of a Garden of Eden type place or state. Maybe this is all just like wild on the fly conjecture, but to me that has some possibilities as to why the planets get sun and moon symbolism associated with them on top of their characterological traits as, you know, the metals and the colors that they correspond to.
Well, let's take it to the actual metal itself and why it's sort of, in a sense, revered because of the really its qualities. It's, you know, liquid and can turn to a gas really easily. It has really high surface tension. It's able to rectify energy, and that means it's able to take maybe AC electricity and turn it into DC, so direct current. It has all these amazing properties, especially people have hooked it up to an antenna and they're able to increase their signal by, you know, 100-fold and those sort of things. So it has this eternal quality to it that it's sort of getting lifted up into the atmosphere and then dropping back down. But the when you put it into the actual model itself, what it is, what sort of struck me, not only is there a type of electrolysis that can occur in the upper atmosphere, but you can have Mercury is able to, say, if it's in nitrates and in the dark, it's actually able to grow silver crystals. And there's also this scientists have been able to transmutate mercury into gold using basically high voltage you know, electricity as well. So it has all these components as a in a mechanical sense as well. And what I proposed as a hypothesis is that because of Mercury's surface tension, its ability to amalgamate metals, that's in draw in different metals into itself and hold them, that it was actually a planet former in a sense. So it's able to, like I said, grow silver and those sort of metals, but it's also able to amalgamate and pull it into itself. So when you put these sort of ideas together, it really does seem like it is actually a planet former.
So there's a number of things in there. Now, if you imagine creation, and creation starts as the all, and then the all splits into an all father and all mother. The thing that needs to happen for something to materially be created is there needs to be a medium for that energy to flow through. And that medium is always going to be the Mercury. So that's where things get really, really interesting, where you look at these Mercury figures, where the Mercury figure has a timeless quality to them. A lot of times, because really before the sun and moon, if you imagined it and just a raw energy, it would split into a cathode and anode. And as Chance was saying, and Lucas and I also work on this, and then with a galvanic cycle as compared to an electrolysis cycle, what we're calling the sun and the moon, you know, that it's just because that planet is, or that luminary whatever is lit up, that is that close. If another one in the battery system during the galvanic side, which is the biochemical side where the battery is wearing down, that what would be the sun would be the cathode. But as soon as you start putting charge into that battery, the actions that were happening before completely reverse themselves. So the thing that was the cathode is now the anode. Because before this, during the galvanic cycle, everything that is lesser than the cathode is deteriorating and sending its energy to the cathode. Now, during the electrolysis cycle, that energy is breaking down the cathode and feeding into the other ones. So that's not really the cathode anymore. That one is the one breaking down and feeding into the other ones. So you see the mechanics have literally reversed. So what we're then with that, again, the sun then is just rather arbitrary. Polaris never changes. And even when you look again at like heathen cosmology, the sun and the moon are only mentioned just as talking about the sun and the moon. Like they're children that were put up into the sky to keep time. It's not Thor, it's not Loki, it's not Heimdall, it's not Odin, it's none of the main characters. And then you look at Greek again, it's not it's Apollo, it's not. And even when it's with the discrepancy where, what is it, Helios? Helios is the other one that was before Apollo. Either way, we're not talking about Zeus. We're not talking about Poseidon. We're not talking about Hades. We're not talking about the main primary figures. Which again, and then when you put it into that duality aspect of understanding that that's where the power is deriving from, is that duality between those two sides. There's always something that's higher. Like when you look at your body, your brain, your thought, where you think most of your thoughts are coming from, your cerebrum and your cerebellum, that's not considered the high point. The crown's considered the high point. You know, you're supposed to have that perfect seed, and that seed splits into those two lesser things, which is the cerebrum and the cerebellum. And that's again what we're talking about. If energy, pure energy, was pouring through Polaris, that would then split into this cathode and anode in order to create this energetic polarity. And then furthermore, it would have to split even further, because that would only be the brain of the system. So that brain portion of it would be one type of energy, and the magnetic portion of the energy would be underneath this, because then there would also be a divisor where it's the original All Father and the original All Mother, and there'd be this whole portion. So there'd be an up down also. That would only be just between the luminaries. There would also be a differential between underneath that crust area where the crystal grid sits and the luminaries. There's a differential between that also.
So I just want to point out one thing about just how confusing and convoluted we've really been duped with this, like Tower of Babel, divide their languages type shit. Because Heimdall, right? You brought up Heimdall, and it made me think about how he's the son of the 9 mothers in the mythology. And in Chaldee, this is claimed by Alexander Hislop, but in Chaldee language, to say the son of 9 virgins, I looked this up. It is Ben Almut Tesha, but in to say the son of the virgin of salvation instead of the son of 9 virgins, you'd say Ben Almut Isha. So it's Almut Isha versus Almut Tesha. Tesha Isha. It's very, very close. So like just little tweaks like that could totally throw off our ability to interpret what is being said. Is it the 9 mothers, the 9 virgins, the 9 muses, or is it the virgin of salvation? And if it is the virgin singular, that's like Virgo, or could even be Isha. The word being used in the Chaldee sounds like Ishtar, which is that one goddess. So it's like everything gets really, really mixed up. And I don't have a point with that other than just like, who knows where the connections are between, like, I think everything is heathen at its root. But then, like you said, the sun worship thing did come later, that they made the sun the main character and the one that they're worshiping for sure. But like where the mythology itself comes from does seem to be very much connected at the root.
Can I take a swing at that Heimdall one real quick?
Yeah.
Because I've actually been working on this one, and this one's really cool. So Heimdall, the perfect white shining one. He is perfect. He is born of 9 mothers, and he is the overseer of men. Creates the three different levels of men, the three your Jarl, Carl, and thralls. So again, that brings us right back to that perfect seed. That perfect seed has to go down through all 9 chakras, and in each point in the body, as that energy is moving down, it gains density. It starts gaining more and more and becoming more material. When it was up here, it was just pure energy. It gets more and more material as it moves down to the goat side, the groin side. And so this is, once it gets there, it's a different being, and you turn around and it goes back up, all the way up, and becomes the pure shining one. So that's your Christos fluid. And when it's sitting up there, he's sitting at the foot of his castle, is at the foot of the rainbow bridge, where everything splits into the different colors. He's the white shining one, white being all the colors. And then the rainbow bridge is where the colors have split into different pieces. And so what we're talking about is that fluid, that perfect seed moving all the way down and back up. And before that became something real, it had to go through all 9 chakras. As I said, it had to take on a little bit more material, a little bit more body at each stage, until then it sacrifices itself and moves itself back up, and it loses body and material and goes back into that perfect shining seed. So we're talking about the Christos fluid with that, and sitting at the crown.
All right, we need to give Lucas some place to weigh in here.
I was going to say, like you were talking about how there's a bit of confusion with language, and definitely there is. The other thing that seems to be confusing for me is that the planets' names are different aspects of the sun as well. So, or they're, like Jupiter is referring to the sky, and those sort of things. So there's definitely a confusion just with the names of the planets, and
Yeah, like Jupiter,
aspects.
just to say his name, like when you go back, it would have been, you wouldn't have said a hard J. Like the earlier etymology, you get the IO for Yova, and that's where you also get U, which it became Jew. So U Pater would have been a more original name for him, and Pater is father, but IO is symbolical of the sun and moon together. It's the 10. It's say 10. It's the it's the completion in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's just, that's what I mean. You could follow these little rabbit holes all the way down to their different meanings of, and yeah, especially with, like you're saying, Jupiter, or it was really a reference to the sky, the patterns above, and then you had the mother, which was the Mother Earth type things, and those sort of constructs. And when you start to put some of these ideas back into like the planetary names as aspects of the sun in the cycle, there is sort of like this little thing that does start to stick out as a creation story that sort of replays every day, in a sense, that the sun is born from the mother and then rises into the sky, and those sort of ideas. So there's a it's almost like the creation story from the very beginning is also a representation. It's fractal in a sense that it's playing out every day. So I just find those things pretty interesting as well.
Oh, that's a really good point. That whatever we're studying, the ring of truth is all about recognizing when something is self-similar across scale. That's what proves that it's nature that you're discovering.
Yeah, and that's what really stuck out with the, I say galvanic cell, but it's really a part of us as well. It's, you have these components that are part of us, which is, your salts, your sulfur, and this mercurial idea, which is like basically like a salt bridge or a communication between the positive and negative. But you see this same electrochemistry in all of nature. So when you see it, like you say, in that fractal sense, and then just apply it up, then it really starts to, give it valid, validity in that.
Hey, we got so many good people in the chat. Karen B just showed up. What up?
Karen B.
Yeah, this is
I
probably
hope you
like
caught Lucas saying that word that was supposed to be validity, but I want to hear him say it again.
I must have missed that.
I said it wrong. Yeah, I know. I struggle with words sometimes. Often than not.
It's because he's Australian, guys. He thinks everything needs to end with IE, and he tries to not do that, and then he struggles. It's okay.
Well, I have to double think everything, because usually I put a swear word between words, and I have to take that out, so it throws me off.
Wow.
Yeah.
You do a really good job with that. It's a good way to slow your speech down and make sure you're speaking the way you want, to meticulously cut out the swear word punctuation.
Yeah. That's part of the Australian thing too.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge.
It is. I mean, I'm a pirate. No one's looking.
Hey, you guys want to see?
You should hear our private conversation. It's bad.
Oh, I heard what he called Lucas before we went live, and Lucas wasn't even here to defend himself. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, he seems to do that a lot, actually.
I think he just enjoys the Australian custom of really ripping on each other.
But then I tell him about it. That's the best part. Then I'm the one who tells him about it.
I think that's a good, healthy expression of masculinity. Honestly, we've got too many delicate snowflakes out there. Speaking of delicate snowflakes, I've got a video. It's like there's a couple from the most delicate snowflake I know, Snake Jones. I'm gonna see if we can play this and make sure it's loud enough. Should be, but whenever I play it, he sent this into our call-in line. When I play it, just give me the thumbs up if you can hear it well enough. If it's too quiet, I'll revise that somehow on the fly. But here we go. Yeah, because I want to catch up on the questions and comments from our call-in line while we still have time, because they'll probably take us into a lot of tangents. All right, Snake Jones.
Don't do it.
That's crazy. We found a hole in it.
Don't do it.
That's a cute goat.
I know what you're thinking.
I don't know why it came through so choppy.
Goats. Chicken food is for chickens.
Ew! That
Let me see that little egg.
When they poop, they just poop. Just comes out.
That's looking good, Snake.
Living the
You
dream.
have a midget chicken? Can you get it? Oh my god.
Do we got a midget chicken?
Look at him. He's just waiting for his chance. Naughty goat. Get.
Oh, that's good.
Hey guys, yeah, the question I was thinking about all day is the practical aspects of this, because I don't, have a formal education, and it's kind of great. because my teachers are Ben and Lucas right now. And guys, Lucas's Telegram is awesome. I'm in there. He's putting out just good stuff I can work with. And yeah, the question is, what can I do at home with something like this? Can I make my own batteries? Should I do some electrolysis experiments with like colloidal silver or electroplating? Because this is what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the, what is it? The Odin and the Cathor, right? The salt bridges. Just, that's my question. What can I do at home to actually get some hands-on stuff, experience with this?
Hey, that's a great couple of videos. Thank you, Snake. But I want to say real quick, if anybody wants to send videos in, there's a way to record directly into a Telegram message, and it makes your video come through with like a circle instead of a full video. It goes better, translates better to the show if you just take a regular video and post it in. Just a little producer chance heads up.
Were you
So what
speaking
can
English?
you do?
You talking about Snake?
No, I'm talking about you. What?
I forgot you're a technological barbarian, right? Well, just dismiss that. Go back to Snake's question, Lucas, and Ben. If you have anything to say, you can follow up.
About
Colloidal
building the
silver
battery.
apps.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I they're pretty simple to make. Like you can just use people make them out of fruit and stuff like lemons and things. But yeah, it's pretty simple to make a battery. So I'd recommend building it and seeing what it does and getting some power out of it and doing all that sort of stuff. But yeah, same with the electrolysis. There's tons of things you could do with that, which is basically getting a power supply and doing the reverse of the battery. So it's one's output and one's input. So 100% just keep reading up on it and play around and find something that you want to use it for.
In the chat, Illuminati mentioned, have you seen Balderson's battery bank? Did you build some batteries or do you just have a sweet setup, Ben? Oh, what are you eating?
He's
I have,
snacking.
Lucas was talking.
We'll
I
wait. You finish.
have 24 L16 lead acid batteries stacked in. It's 3 series of 8. Because I'm a heathen,
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on like building your own batteries and experimenting with that electrolysis
I
experiment
do.
he mentioned?
I do. So first, let's understand that. Let's just simplify this for everybody because we're talking about people are just starting experiments at home. When you're talking about an electrolysis event, there's external power put in. So either the cathode, which is where you're putting in the positive side of that power, is going to start breaking down. Or if it's in a solution that's able to break down, that energy will transfer off into that solution and sometimes break down or send the charge through that solution. So that's what we're talking about with electrolysis. And there's a number of things that you can do with that. Snake was right on the money with colloidal silver. Colloidal silver is fairly easy to make. The same applies to just about everything. You can just start breaking things down into their component pieces, seeing what happens. Lots of different things you can do with those. We all know what Ormus is also. So the same thing that you're talking about there. And then on the flip side, you're talking about galvanic. And galvanic is where the energy is transferring because of a chemical reaction, because of some type of differential and some type of deterioration. And with that, there's a lot of really interesting experiments that a person can do. And another thing to include is check out Autodidactic's channel. He has a guy on there that's working with spark gaps. That's just fantastic, which really spikes up your voltage. and you start playing with usable voltage and amperage, and understanding that when you spike up your voltage like that for free, well, voltage and amperage are inversely proportional. So if you get something that for no apparent reason, like a spark gap, is all of a sudden spiking your voltage, you've got this all of a sudden glut of voltage that was not in the system. Well, now you just take and invert it into amperage, and now you've got a bunch of amperage because, again, amps and volts are inversely proportional. So there's all kinds of different setups you could do with that. Now, Lucas and I are obviously already in talks of building a battery based off the galvanic model that him and I have been working on for the last couple of years, and putting that together and making a functional model. And obviously, if this matches at all nature, this should basically at least be the best battery that's ever fucking existed. You know, it basically is running just off of nothing.
I'd like to see you guys
So
have a 3-man conversation with Wiseman. Dude's also
I
got
know,
some
we're-
good knowledge.
Lucas is coming in. I got Wiseman coming on in February, and Lucas is coming in for that. We're gonna double team him, and we're gonna try and drag him into the crew. Like, you're joining us, George.
Yes. Cool. So I saw that
We
coming
need your
from a mile
brain.
away. Hey, I'm gonna
Yes.
step away for a second, but I'll still be able to hear. But I drank a bunch of orange juice before the show, and I guess it's not staying inside me. I'll be right back.
I understand. So that should make the best battery ever. There's a few other thoughts that I have with things that you could do, like if you're setting up and making like the hydrogen machine, which is an electrolysis machine, which is just then creating the breakdown of the water, because the water is going to break down easier than the anode and the cathode are. But what's building up in the machine matches what the plates are made out of, and the anode and the cathode. So there's a lot of experiments. You know, you could maybe gold plate some of them, silver plate some of them, and then see if the sludge that appears inside the machine matches that, or try doing it with a pure solid electrodes. All kinds of experiments. And then the idea is again to either get your voltage side built up or your amperage side built up, and then once you do that, you switch that into something usable and start making usable power that you can actually drive something with, because that's the challenge right there, is making it into something you can drive something with it. Go ahead, Lucas.
So, especially for the battery idea and the applying it to the world is actually really quite complicated to make it, because you're dealing with so many different sort of things at play that you would have to manufacture those qualities in a sense. Say, for example, we've got this solid dome basically that's frozen. You know, so you're going to have to manufacture those things. There's also it's not just one battery, it's overlaying multiple batteries at the same times. That's why you're getting this what's called a thermogalvanic battery, which is a heat differential battery. So, you know, you could even play around with those sort of concepts as well, where you're heating one side and cooling the other and getting electrical transfer just from that hot and cold. So, you know, when I was thinking about, how would I actually approach doing a model of this, it's like you've got to take so many different things into account to actually get the setup correct as well. So the other thing that I think people should probably be aware of and maybe play around with is the Geet engine. The other thing that I think the Geet engine is basically you basically go into the fourth state of matter. So you start with your solid, liquid, gas, and then plasma. So that would be what you're trying to do, is go from a liquid to gas to plasma, and actually running an engine on plasma. And I think that's probably something it's very practical, that is probably the future of energy supply for homes and things like that. And it's basically a way of refining materials to create energy, utilize that energy that's inherent in those materials. So it's called GEET, so the GEET engine. And those things run on, and it actually works very similar to how the sun works, in a sense. It's got, in a low pressure system, you're basically, a magnetic field is set up, and then you're dealing with gases and heat. So it works exactly the same way. You have those three same principles. And so I think that's where the future of efficiency really lies, in working with plasmas as an energy source.
I found
Well,
a
the whole
picture of
thing
the
is-
geet.
The whole thing is, when you look at it, what this is doing is really taking almost a higher understanding, because once you reach that level of energy, everything's kind of the same. And so at that point, once this thing's producing that plasma energy, you can literally, yeah, I know there's puppies crying.
We just
you
want to
can,
see them. I mean, we can hear puppies. Who doesn't want to see
wanna
puppies?
some puppies. They want to see puppies.
I'm sure the chat will agree.
Once you oh yes. Hi, pretty girl. Who's a pretty girl? Say hi to everybody. Everybody see you, right?
Oh, wrinkle face.
Yes. This one's Spot. This is the very first one out of our dogs that has any color on him whatsoever. And this one pops out and with a little tail just going. There's a Spot. Hi, Spot. Hi, buddy. I know. Oh, you're gonna give me? No, don't get my earbuds though.
This is making everyone's night, I think. Who doesn't love some puppies?
So once you get whatever the material is, because that's the thing with this geet, is once you've reached this plasma state, it doesn't really matter what you put in there. It can be coffee, orange juice, take a leak into it, give it some urine therapy, whatever. Once you're able to harvest from this plasma level, all you need to do is take whatever it is and get it to that plasma level. And that's what we're talking about here. So it's really higher understanding when you're dealing with that, because everything is just energy condensed. And just like we were talking about earlier with Heimdall and the rainbow, where Heimdall's this shining perfect white thing, because we all know white gives out all colors. And underneath him is the rainbow, which is the colors splitting into individual things and losing that wholeness. When we take that energy and move it back up to that prime level and start harvesting off of that, we don't have this issue of needing these differentials. And that's what we're talking about with this.
Yeah, his stuff's really interesting. I built one back in, it's been a few years now, but it was just a small little, it was a little petrol engine, and then I fitted it out with the geet. And basically what it does is it takes the heat from the engine output, the exhaust, and wraps it around the intake. And then some of those gases are actually put into a bubbler, which is like a little small fuel container, and it bubbles through. The hot air is bubbling through your fuel, and so the gases are coming off, and then it goes into the intake, and then there's a metal rod, just an iron rod in there, and that rod starts spinning when these gases are flowing into the engine. And so as the piston comes down, you're creating a vacuum. You got the heat, and then you got a spinning rod which creates a magnetic field. And so you've got those three things that are operating, and then you're getting basically breaking down these this material into a plasma. And so yeah, the efficiencies are unreal. And the first thing I sort of noticed is like, well, when I first built it, I'm like, oh, well, I better test it out. And so I just put half fuel, half water, and it actually started to run better. So that was the first thing. It's like, and then I started running it on, what a Coke and different things that were laying around in the shed. But yeah, so it would do those things. It was finicky because you have to deal with vacuums and things like that. So that does need, a bit more skill level than I had back in those days. It was more like turning taps on and these sort of things to get it going. But yeah, definitely people should look out for that, especially if they're looking into sort of going off grid and setting up maybe a standalone generator. And that's what I plan to do as well for here. So yeah.
Really cool. You guys want to bounce to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay, this one, I don't want to speak too soon, but it might be more for you, Lucas, but I'm sure both of you will have thoughts. It's from, let me pull up the screen. Gabriel, also known as Slick Dissident, who I know has been lurking in your chat, Lucas. He says, I'm curious about the lunar standstill cycle as it might relate to a larger timescale expression of the analemma or a lunar lemniscate. The lemniscate is like the infinity symbol, and the analemma really is too, but it's more upright like an 8. And he also has got, he says it's possible, he's curious about its possible implications to some kind of cosmic cymatic resonance, the lunar standstill cycle. And he's got an image from your recent show with Pat over at Pat Life Podcast, who I've been on with him too. Maybe Ben has too. Cool dude. So I'll leave this image up and let you talk into it.
Pat is awesome if you haven't checked him out.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I don't know about like sort of the resonance thing. Basically, there's the moon and the sun are communicating. So definitely there is something that would be changing, and I think it's mainly weather-wise. And if you're looking in astrology sort of stuff, then I think it would definitely have effects on events as such. It's interesting to know that we're sort of going into 2025 is the lunar maximum. So, is there some correlation between what's going on now and this sort of ending period of this, the lunar maximum? I think maybe there might be, because there are definitely seem to be weather correlations as well. And that we sort of energetically react to the moon as well, in a sense that, you have a full moon and certain characteristics happen. So does this change in the swing of the moon between every month and its positional shifts, does that have a larger impact on growth cycles, how we react and things? I think it does. And, can you find information on this? I think it's very difficult. I've tried to find some stuff, but a lot of the good things are sort of well hidden, as you may know. But the other things that correspond to this is, say, people doing stock market type analysis, and so they very much rely on these sort of lunations. And am I answering that question well enough, you reckon?
I mean, you can only do your best, but the only thing that, I don't know, maybe you kind of did address it. He wanted to know about cymatics in context with that, but I think cymatics, once you look into it enough, it becomes self-evident that all the oscillations that we perceive are really sound-based, and they just are witnessed by us on a variety, a large scale or spectrum of different sensory modalities, but it's all vibratory, it's all sound, and thus it's all cymatic in its effect, whether or not we can perceive it quite as clearly as like putting sand on a plate and putting sound through that. So I think that there is a probably definitely some implications to cosmic cymatic resonance, and that even comes through and expresses in number. I had an interesting revelation the other day, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, about, you know, there's often been, when we look at stuff like the tarot and we try to examine it from alchemical, but then also we try to then examine it from astrological, different symbolism sets become confused between those two lenses. And one of those confusions that's been constantly a topic in my circles lately, thanks to Ben really bringing this to the fore, although it's in the mythology going back, and it's even in writers like Tolkien, the masculine moon, feminine sun. And what made me start thinking about this again was the Metonic cycle and the Saros cycle. So with the Metonic cycle, you have a 19-year cycle where the moon returns to, where it was before. Like, interesting that there was a Metonic cycle of 19 years between 9/11 and cooties breaking out. And that was the previous Metonic cycle was all about the war on terror. And now this one's going to be probably about scamdemics and medical dictatorship. Probably maybe pivot into climate lockdowns, but I don't know if that's going to be as soon as people think. I could see them writing out the pandemic stuff for a whole Metonic cycle and then going hard on climate change, because after you've had 19 years of beating it into your mind that lockdowns are effective or the government is allowed to do them, then climate lockdowns would be no sweat. But I don't think they could pull that off really quickly. Anyway, I'm getting ahead, or I'm getting in a tangent. So the Metonic cycle, 19 years relating to the moon. Well, 1 and 9, going back to the 9 thing again, is really 1. So that's your pole. And the Saros cycle for the sun is an 18-year cycle. And that's where the sun comes back to where it was for eclipses every 18 years. To put it in a really simple nutshell, people should look into it. SOROS cycle. So if the sun has a cycle of 18 years, well, that's a 1 and an 8 is a 9. So you have your masculine, the 1, and the feminine with the 9 cycle. And in the tarot, to bring this back to the tarot, they have the moon card listed as 18 and the sun listed as 19, which would correspond them to being a masculine sun, feminine moon, like we're taught in Occidental Western occultism. But the cycles of those planets, if you will, more correspond to them being feminine sun, masculine moon. Now, I don't like to get hung up on that to the point where like it's a hard dogma, because really anodes and cathodes flip over time anyway, as Ben talks about. So they can probably both correspond to both, but I just threw a lot out there. And
so I'll tell you the reason why I came to that conclusion, and you do see both versions, so in mythology and things like that. So what it was really me trying to figure out, well, what one's acting as the anode and what one's acting as the cathode. And so when you look at a galvanic cell, you're looking at one side, the anode produces oxygen, and the other side produces hydrogen. And so when you start to put this into place into our world, well, you say the moon's producing oxygen and the sun's producing hydrogen, burning hydrogen, like they actually say. So that was how it fit. And so then there's an energy direction that occurs in a galvanic cell, because it's a direct current. And so it goes from anode to cathode. And so this sort of idea would be the masculine, feeds to the feminine, and then the feminine radiates out, lifts all the waters up, and feeds the masculine. It is very circular, but there is a definite direction when you're putting it in this model. And so that's really what I was looking at. And so that's where the feminine masculine came from. It was more the actions of the battery rather than anything else. And then I did find correspondences in older mythology where you would have these two figures, whether it was Thoth and Shesset, and then they got the Horus is the child. And so there's this same sort of principle at play where you have the Shesset character, this sun with the lion figure, lion colors and very sun-like colors on her. And she is the intuition side of things, and she gives basically knowledge to the masculine side, and then that masculine side basically interprets what she's saying in a sense. So there is that sort of symbology that's corresponding to sun and moon, as well as our own psychology. So I found all those things fascinating.
You should have heard some of the this was like, I think this was one of the things that took Lucas and I the longest time to actually work through. And like every other day we would talk, because Lucas and I talk on the phone probably at least 5 days a week for a couple hours. And like every other day we would flip sides, almost like we were debate teams practicing, just constantly arguing with each other about it. Because it's so heavily programmed from the Abrahamic. Now, when you really start looking at this battery cycle, and as when like in
is that the point where Ben loses internet and has to go Voltron and come back?
Is that the generator to just die?
It seems to happen around, I don't know, an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. I've done a lot of shows with Ben now. And yeah, he'll probably be back. He has to, I assume, switch to a different modem. So I'll watch for him to start moving again in the screen, but I'll take his funny, swollen, frozen face that we can mock down for now. And he'll come back. But yeah, is there anything else you want to say on this subject before I play another question?
No, go for it, mate.
Okay, so this question, and then we'll let Ben come back and when he gets back in and address that whole question. I just don't know how long it'll be. So this comes from SB Alger, or Sean, who Ben actually had on Odin's Alchemy not long ago. He's a fellow co-spider with the Weaving Spiders and the host of RX Only Picture Show with Jim Maiden. So it's a brief question. I kind of listened to it already a little bit, tried to, and sounds like it's relating to analemma also, which I'm super fascinated with. So here we go. I'm gonna unmute it and we will play. It's muted still. Okay, here we go.
Hey guys, I got a question for you. Have you ever doubted the analemma as being legitimate? Because that was part of my square flat earth study, is that we had our doubts whether the analemma was demonstrable through research.
I haven't
guys,
verified it myself. I haven't verified it myself, but it seems like it'd be something with modern technology that would be really easy to validate. And I've seen photographic evidence that seems to validate it, but I haven't zetetically done it myself.
Yeah, same. And I thought it was basically, you just go out at the middle of the day or the same time every day and take a photo, and it is
from the same angle, the same position, same angle. That way you can see exactly how the sun is doing that pattern. Now, to me, another question is like, is it like that forever? Does the oscillation pattern change in 1,000 years? And we really wouldn't have any way to know that.
Yeah, that's been on my mind as well, as like, especially looking at the lunar standstills and things like that, and this slow oscillation that happens over 18.6 years or 19 years. Is like, well, does the sun do the same thing? Has the sun always reached Cancer and Capricorn sort of thing, those ideas? And is that movement, but is there a movement there with the sun that actually creates the ages? There's just a few little questions like that, but I don't know. We're behind in a lot of our understanding of what's real and what's not real. So it's just a matter of seeing how these things play out and correlate to each other. But yeah, the analemma is fascinating too because it sort of details. I've thought about it in a couple of different ways. One way is that it actually shows that there's a time discrepancy in the speed of the sun. So that's one way of looking at it, and the other way of looking at it is actually we're only seeing it from sort of one perspective, that we're looking up, and it could actually be more like an Ouroboros or what are those, a Mobius strip, rather than an analemma as such. It's just because of our perspective, it could be twisted.
That's a really good point, that there's also depth and height to account for, but we're kind of seeing it on this two-dimensional plane from our perspective of the horizon and the dome.
And that was when I was looking at the analemma and this idea of the sun actually creating a visual effect of where we see the stars. What I was looking at the analemma in a different way, that you could actually say, well, it's changing height as well as its position relative to Cancer and Capricorn, and that would actually sort of, if it's doing that a Mobius strip type thing, like a movement upwards and downwards, well, that may account for this circular movement rather than just a figure eight, which would be only one half of a circle and then reverse in a sense. So there's oddities that are going on that we probably just don't know about.
So when you describe it as a potential Mobius strip, I'm trying to visualize that, because a Mobius strip requires that there's a two-dimensional strip, if you will. It's like if you had a piece of paper, say my hand has a front side and a back side, and it's a figure eight that also twists. So are you saying that we're seeing a different side or face of the sun potentially at different parts of the cycle? Because like with the moon, we only ever see the same thing, which leads people to have ideas like that it's a map or a projection or a hologram, that kind of idea.
I think they are.
You can screen share too. That should be easy to do.
I'll screen share this picture.
Hey, we got your screen share.
So you can see that?
Yeah, it's like a rubber band.
Yeah, so I just basically was thinking about the analemma as a rubber band. So this would be the perspective that we're seeing it on the ground, and then you move it as a different side-on perspective, and that's the same thing. It's still crossed, but you just you're looking at it from a different perspective. So I think it was just something I was playing with. It's just an idea. Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. That gives a different dimensionality to it for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. There's lots and lots to think about with what's going on. Yeah. So
we've also got another question from Snake Jones, and we're hitting the bottom of the call-in line, which is cool. We can always keep it going, but I want people to know that they can drop questions or leave us voicemails in there. I might even open it up to like a live caller if or two if Ben doesn't pop back in, because you never know. Sometimes he's just gone. He's a slippery fucking dude. Oops, I cursed. But I posted the Telegram group for Vibe Rant calls in the two chats, and the last question that's currently hanging in there, although we did get a share of your music, which I'll play that at the end. You have a track created with Marty Leeds, I hear, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, done that a while back. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll play that as like our outro, and that'll be fun. I like having music at the end and hanging out in the chat. So Snake Jones, back to Snake Jones, he says, can I become a market gardener? What does it take for someone to live that lifestyle? I think that would probably apply across countries pretty similarly. Might be even more expensive where you live compared to like me and Snake live in the same state, and it's extremely low cost of living and low fear levels. It's pretty great. Missouri.
Where I am, it's pretty pretty cheap. And basically,
right on.
where I bought, I had land around the house, and that's where I did it in town. Basically, you can do it by, borrowing people's land and things like that. I really highly recommend looking at J.M. Fortier's work, and also Curtis Stone. He's done a lot of stuff, and that's basically where I learnt from. They're actually not that hard to set up. I mean, your main sort of outlays would be because I nearly use all hand tools. Once the garden's sort of set in place, it's just a matter of hand tools. So one of the major outlays is probably the cool room. So being able to store and harvest your stuff, wash your stuff, and then store it in somewhere where you can actually keep it ready to go to market. And the biggest thing is like where can you sell your product? So if you've got a decent market to sell to, you've got enough people. I mean, it's just a matter of finding a bit of land and going at it. It's really not that expensive. I think I spent 25,000 or something setting it up. That was with the cool room. It was a cheap cool room to start with. It was like $1,000 cool room. I bought the push cedar. I actually ended up buying, the reason it was that much, which you could do it even cheaper, is I bought a rotary hoe, which people could get away with with just hiring one to set up the garden first of all, and then you're right, you just got a few rakes and hoes, and once you got your cedar, you're laughing. I just used a big bathtub to actually wash all the veggies, and made all the tables myself. So yeah.
Right on. A question from me is, do you employ much of what you know about metaphysics, electricity, mysticism, maybe even like permaculture? I assume you're not doing like the same type of grow operations as Farmer Bob down the road from me. I mean,
No.
if there is a Farmer Bob, probably.
Well, I was farming well before I got into sort of the electric side of the flat earth and things like that. I was actually, in some ways, I was I've been listening to how the economy works and monetary system and all that, and I was like, this thing's fucked. So I was like, I've got to do something that that I enjoy doing, as well as is a protection mechanism if things hit the fan, And so that's why I sort of got into farming. And it's really been good, through all this sort of stuff. My wife, she does catering. So, people haven't really been supporting me as much as I'd like here. So it just means I'm really growing for the kitchen. And so it's been really a team effort, and being able to stay home and have that flexibility and work out what you want to do for the day. And if you haven't got the energy, or the day is not quite right, you can do something else, or do workarounds and actually spend time studying or whatever it is, researching. So it's a really good lifestyle if you can move into it.
Yeah, I'm not having to just go out to stores to eat would be pretty helpful. I find myself spending so much time just going to the big rectangle with all the food. At least I can get the organic produce around here, and it's not bad in terms of price. Like, I have a great access to diet, but self-reliance is the key to sovereignty. So that's great. And being able to work from where you live and then have that ability to oscillate back and forth from research and physical labor productivity, and to also, since you're your own boss, you can easily do both at the same time. Listen to something while you're hoeing, rotary hoeing.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's right. Like it really is. It's been, because doing the 9 to 5 and working for, like, I was in a government job and those sort of things. I was actually a firefighter for a while. So it was tedious, and once you get out of that system, you realize how, you know, soul destroying it actually is, you know. And to grow something that you know is healthy and no chemicals, trying to do the best for the soil and all that sort of stuff is really actually nice to give to people as well. So it's very, you know, you feel like you're being a contribution to society or whatever. So I think it's been a really good thing for me.
Yeah, I think that if people quit their jobs and just started growing food, we would be out of most of the messes that the world is in right now. That would do it. So to pivot back to the sun question and the analemma, there was a commenter, I think it was Heartline. I want to make sure now. Yeah, it says the sun is a tube. Oh, we got Benjamin back. I think we'll see if he loads in. Looks like it though. But the idea of the sun as a tube. Oh yeah, hey, what's up, buddy?
Had to get Voltron the stinger.
Yeah, I figured. I let everyone know that you were wrestling with Voltron. We were having a little chat about the farming lifestyle, and let's back up, and I'll come back to the question of sun as tube because I at least have a little bit of thoughts about that. Ben, the question that we just fielded from Snake Jones, it was for Lucas. Snake doesn't really want to know your opinion, but I do. He wants to know about being a market gardener. What does it take for someone to live the lifestyle that they can profit off their produce and take it to market? Do you have experience with that?
No.
Nothing to say about that. You just do your own stuff.
Yeah, it's for me so far. It's mostly. I mean, we do some. We do take stuff to market. Not anything I grow. I got too much animals. You know, everything extra that we got basically either goes into a ferment or goes to the animals. I haven't been able to expand a garden out to near the size that Lucas has. I mean, holy smoke! Some of the, you know, him and I are talking, and he'll have videos, and he's walking along in his greenhouse and just phenomenal. I don't produce anything near that volume yet. Partially again because I have animals, so I have to split my resources, split my time, and then the animals themselves, you really have to fortify your garden, or else the animals themselves are the worst thing ever for your garden. This year, this last year, because I moved, I didn't have a garden set up at all, so I got this tool trailer. It's an enclosed trailer that isn't the frame's a little bent on it. So I got it for free, and I just took and parked it there, and I use it for my tools. So I took and tried doing a garden on top of that, and even that, I had a hell of a time. We were constant. Oh, when my grandsons were here, it was great because we had a bunch of purple potatoes up there and stuff. And my one grandson, Odin, he was our little watchdog, and he'd go flying across the yard. Get off there, peacocks! And just screaming at him, and he'd run up the ladder and go up there and chase the peacocks off. That was hilarious. It was good stuff. But yeah, no, I don't. Lucas has more experience in that area than I do. I do the alpaca hair. I make a bunch of things. I pick a bunch of things wild, like a wild horsetail, things like that. But actually growing and sustaining off of what you grow, Lucas is the man.
You're the man. What? I'm kicking to you.
Yeah, I'm the man. Yeah. Oh,
So
was that
okay,
me? Was I supposed to come in then?
yeah. I mean, if you're the man, you get to decide whether or not you come in.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. So we got this question of the sun as a tube that I was hanging on to, and we were looking at the rubber band Mobius strip. Could be conceptualized as a tube action. I don't know why. I think that there could be some like fractal correspondence to nature with that idea. Is just that
I
how
mean,
many tubes?
Non-Euclidean.
Nature's got
geometry.
tubes everywhere.
You just got to look at
Non-Euclidean.
it through John. Yeah, just non-Euclidean. It could
wanna
easily be a tube. It's just non-Euclidean.
Yeah, let's go there. I was just gonna say about tubes is that they're in our body, they're everywhere. It's like everything is just like a bunch of tubes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
Nanotubes, yeah, and batteries too. Like the batteries I want are carbon nanotubes.
Well, like
Little
think about the generative principle, the sex organs, which are like in a way the furthest back ancestors of the fractal scaling. You know, it's the 1 and the 0. It's the pole and the hole. It's an external tube and an internal tube. So
Mm-hmm.
if the
Mm-hmm.
if the luminaries had some kind of structure like that, it would make sense. It's just like you can't get outside the firmament to investigate that. So Heartline says it's the Antonio Subriat's theory. That is interesting.
But no, if you've never looked at non-Euclidean geometry, that's like what choral display and stuff. So it's not like normal geometry. You can't mathematically figure it out at all. It doesn't work. It's some really weird shit. But something that is 100 miles apart could be an inch apart at the same time. Very, very interesting if you've never looked into it. It's a very small field because there's not any really great answers for any of it. You can't really mathematically figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know. I just see them as sort of spheres and metals. So it might be a little bit boring, or it might be too, back to the old sort of system viewpoint that people sort of want to stray away from. But that's what makes the most sense when viewing it in the battery terms. But are there other things going on, tubular sort of motions of sending energy? Don't know.
Karen B's looking at it with the solar filter on a P900. That sounds pretty cool. Yeah, she says it doesn't look like a tube. That's what the comment says. I feel you. It's a fun thought experiment, though. So in the Rockfin chat,
I wanted. Can I get back to what I was saying before Voltron decided he needed some lube?
I figured you forgot with as much dabs as you do, but sure, man.
Fuck no. You would be shocked. I can, like 2 years later, I will pick up this conversation. It's stupid.
Okay, cool.
But so when we were figuring
I don't
out
remember
the
what we were talking about.
feminine, yeah, I know. It's okay. When we were figuring out that masculine and feminine aspect, then we had to take it to then the reproductive cycle. And because that's what you're looking at with, like, the sun, Jesus, the sun being born, or, any of the mercurial figures being the production, but then also being from before them is this understanding. So when you look at the human birth cycle, in order to get that something more, you're talking about the reproductive cycle. And when you look at that cycle, the man gives something of himself into the woman, and it's extraordinarily energetic. And then there's a gestation period, and the woman puts her own into it again, and then something greater, something more than what either of the two of them put into it comes from it. So, and again, when you're looking at the anode, the reaction that you're having is a fission reaction, which is a small reaction. The reaction that you're getting at the cathode is a fusion type reaction, where the actual energy particles from the anode are merging with the cathode, and there's a fusion happening, which again, you take all of this back to the birth cycle. You really start to put which side's masculine and which side's feminine during our current state of affairs, which side is and which side is doing what. It's just putting the mechanics to it.
Word. Lucas just saw you shared a while back. Well, it wasn't that long ago, 8 minutes, so I'm not too slow. But your Instagram, where you've got some pictures of produce and farm stuff. So I think I want to pull that up just for fun.
They're a bit old, but you get the idea.
Yeah. So you got a music farm. You got.
That's the room I got in now. So it's my sort of studio and that.
Is this your rotary hoe?
Yeah. Right.
Cool.
There's some tomatoes there.
Going and juicing right out of the garden has got to be like next
It's
level.
the best. Yeah.
Wow. Oh wow, these are just pretty, man. It's a nice looking. You do boxes for people where they just take all like what they need for the week home.
Used to. I was there was a time when I was doing tons of these every week. So it'd just be, I was growing lots of different things and putting them into boxes like you see here, and it was about $30 a box or something like that. And then it sort of dropped off. And when all this sort of nonsense hit, a lot of the markets dropped off as well. So it really did take a big hit of the farm because I was also selling. I'd do pre-made salads. I don't know if there's pictures there of it, but so I would have a mixed bag, like your spicy mix, or you just Salanova mix and things like that. So I was doing these salad mixes and bagging them up and selling them to the shop. And so that sort of stuff, because I live close to a border, they shut down the border, and so I couldn't go across to sell, and it was just getting painful to do all this sort of stuff. And so it's and my wife, she did a lot of catering gigs, and that meant every other weekend we're doing weddings or going to, say, horse races or whatever it was, and selling, doing the catering there. So that a lot of that stopped as well. So now it's down to sort of really have to redefine how I'm doing the garden and and how we're approaching things. But this whole thing's really has, in a sense, if you do think about it, has taken a huge toll on what, because we're cranking. We're making some good cash to, get us all out of debt and all the rest of that sort of stuff. But
definitely an attack on independent, small business type people. The whole situation, the wealth transfer from the regular folks to the super billionaire class is obvious. Snake Jones says Lucas is living my dream. Yeah, well, man, you're making fast progress, Snake. I'm impressed all the time with what you share. So here's a cool question from the Rockfin chat, since we're just showing all these different vegetables. Day Tripper, thanks for the tip. Day Tripper wants to know about nature's signature, which would be like different vegetables corresponding to what they look like in the body, like the carrots to the eye, walnut to brain, tomato to heart, etc. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
Absolutely. That's it's all very cymatic. So the things that are very similar, they're going to work more together. Absolutely. When you try to eat those things that correspond are very similar to those parts in your body, it definitely feeds those parts. It tends to have the minerals in it. The minerals in and of itself is what's creating the pattern. So when you look, most people, when they look at Masaru Emoto's work, think that water itself holds the memory, and it doesn't. So if you read his work and actually get his books and read them and start putting more of a thought process to it, his initial experiments where he just used the droplets of water and froze them and looked at whatever they made, that had the salt in it. And then in order to put in external input and make that stick, he wiped the memory of the salt of the water, which it was distilling the water and removing all the salts. So the salts are the solid structure part of the entire thing. And that mineral that's in that is going to correspond to the mineral in the body that's also making that similar type structure. That's going to be the cymatic pattern of that mineral.
Yeah, it all comes back to cymatics. I mean, I kind of take it for granted that people know about that, but I really ought to have a full-on cymatics expert on the show sometime, because it's really, really crucial key part of the puzzle.
I think there's something to be said for eating the foods that you grow at the certain times of the year as well that really make a difference. Not just because you're getting it so ripe, but they're sort of corresponding to that time frame. So I think there's something important to that, and there's also like
Your body's needs at that time that fruit comes or vegetable comes ready.
Yeah, like if you think about tomatoes and things, and I've been like, because I've got so many of them at the moment, I just eat them constantly. It's like nearly breakfast, lunch. But you know, they're high in magnesium, like good for your muscles and hydrating and all these sort of things at the same time that you're doing a lot of work. And it's interesting when you look at the tomato and you look at the top of the tomato, it's got the like a sun encode, which I was saying this on another show, I think maybe with Pat, but you've got the sun goes in its cycle is 360 degrees, but it has 365 days a year, so it's got 5 extra sort of points, and when you place them evenly around that 360 degree circle, it actually does a pentagram. So it's actually showing this sort of similarity between the tomato and the so I was just,
it's like the 5 thing. It's how like the sun makes things grow, but they grow on the phi pattern, which is where we get
ratio.
5, the word 5, because that's the phi is encoded in the pentagram, the transcendental number. Yeah,
that's right. It's got the ratio in there that our body's made out of. And actually, when you look at the Chinese medicine or the Chinese meridian system, they actually map the meridians via phi. So it's picking points that your body's already made phi, but it's picking points between points, and then you'll find a meridian point there, an acupuncture point. So I found that very interesting when I was looking at that as well. So
I want to get into that in our next conversation, where it's one-on-one for InnerVerse, the blending of some of the Eastern Western perspectives, because I think that's where there's a lot of really good, tasty information. Like I'm a Qigong guy. I've done my own study on meridians, but not like in a trained way. And I've found that just simple knowledge of that was really helpful for energy healing stuff I do, because like I can find out, your index finger is having a problem, or your thumb's having a problem. That corresponds to your lungs. Your index finger, that's on the meridian channel that goes to your digestive tract. And if you know those simple things, or you have a chart handy, then what was just like a piece of random information for one person becomes quite informative for the individual that knows how that channel flows.
Yeah, well, a lot of my understanding and sort of adventure and research has really extended from learning kinesiology, and so I learned a kinesiology in Melbourne, which was more based on integration of these different modalities as well. So it was you actually use your hand as a tool to actually find problems in a body, and via muscle testing. So it's been a big deal for me, and it's something that I've always kept in the background. That's something I want to go back to when I find more information about this, the nature of our world, and apply it back into that kinesiology sort of stuff that I originally learned. And I think at the end of the day, what I really want to achieve is something where we could have a health modality based on the battery, based on all these sort of things, and put it back in that sort of sense. I think that's that's where I'd like to see it go. So
We were talking about plasma batteries, and the human body is one. It is one. Like another cool thing that you brought up, Ben, is the water question. How the memory isn't in the H2O, it's in the salts, it's in the crystal element, and it's to me, what I've learned from studying and working with people one-on-one in sound balancing sessions, which is applying electricity to their auric field, because sound is electricity, that the memory is 100% the distributed bioplasma or electrical flow, energetic current through their whole field. That's where the memory is. Most of it is in their core, where it should be in balance in the middle, but some of it, like trauma, goes off balance to the left or right. But memory is the energy or the plasma itself. It's not anywhere physical. There's no filing cabinet in the brain where you find the right cells and you can decrypt those and have the exact memory. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the stuff that I've researched, they talk about this polarity and one thing's out and that. But when you actually put it into the Trinity context, you're starting to work from a different angle again, that you're working with both polarities, but you're also working with that middle line. And that's, a lot of what the old Zazen and Buddhist stuff is about as well, is being not too swayed one way or the other way, but being in that central point. And I think really that's where a lot of the health sort of stuff needs to go, is to actually check both polarities in a sense, but also see how they're communicating and see how that central point is going in a sense.
Well, let's see if we can maybe fit in at least one, maybe two more questions that I'm seeing hanging out in the chat. We have Debbie asking about Polaris, the North Star that got brought up. Polaris, polarity, buzzword. She asks, the sun can hide it? Would this be during the winter months in the north? Ben, you were talking about Polaris. Do you want to answer about that point?
Yeah, the sun during the daytime, every day, the sun hides it ever so slightly. And during the winter months, it's only for a few hours. During the summer months, it's quite a bit. But if you start applying the story to what you're actually seeing, you're seeing that Polaris is always exactly the same, no matter what. It doesn't matter whether you can see it because it's dark enough out or not. It's always the same. And then as the sun comes up, the sun temporarily blinds you out of seeing Polaris. But as soon as the sun falls, which it does every day, Polaris comes back and it's right exactly where it was waiting. Your being able to see it didn't really make a difference. It's always there in the same spot.
Another question. This is for, we got into this a little bit in the InnerVerse chat talking about, or no, it was during the live, the premiere of the recent InnerVerse episode with Jenny Rivers, a lot of diet questions in there. And the topic comes up about like raw foods and fruitarian diet. But Shannon LeGros in the YouTube chat asks about, for places with harsh winters, what's the best for cold times for someone who craves citrus and tropical items? I'll let you guys field that one. It's a tough one. That's the hard sell about fruitarianism, is that there are places in the world where you don't get it all year.
This is one of the things that I fight and argue with, especially in the heathen community, because in the heathen community, because of the way we're taught today, where men eat meat, and if you're manly, you eat a lot of meat, and in a small northern European area, that really wasn't a sustainable idea at all. Now, on the flip side, let's say you have, 3-4 apple trees, 3-4 whatever trees, whatever fruit that you want. You're obviously one of the big things about fruit, and most people know it is they'll go out and eat a few apples when the apples come ripe, and then most people let the rest of them fall on the ground, and then they just rot and animals eat them and whatnot. Well, if you didn't have a grocery store to go to, you would never fucking dream of doing that. Never. You would never let your food go to rot. You would make sure you preserved it. So what was the easiest way in that time period to preserve food when you didn't have refrigeration? So they would take honey and make a low ferment mead, a low alcohol ferment, and that's what they would then eat and drink throughout the year. Because once you take that fruit and stick it in some honey water and let it ferment for a bit, it all of a sudden can sit on a shelf for the next 3 years, and it's just going to taste better and better the longer it sits there. So and that's with no refrigeration whatsoever. So when they wanted to do that, they would be smart and harvest everything that they could, preserve it, and stack it away. And that's what we need to get back to doing also.
It's a really good answer. You're in a tropical paradise, Lucas, so you probably don't have.
No, I'm not. No.
Oh, you're not? I thought all of Australia was the same, just like sunshine and
Like
beaches and poisonous shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you
we
should
have
say that
quite a
they have-
variety.
He constantly has
You know, it's like
cockatiels and like
burnt.
tropical birds all around him. He's like Tarzan out there. He's lying. It's wonderful.
No, well, we don't get snow where I am, that's for sure. But yeah, it does get pretty hot here as well. But I'm in a reasonably temperate area. Yeah, I know. Like if you're doing the raw food thing, it's hard. I guess it's the other thing is like you know, the cooling effects of the fruits basically, because it actually, you know, we are really tropical beings in a sense. That's what we're sort of made for. So yeah. And if you're not
Or
getting
we've
right
just been
fruit,
so like we've been so damaged in our potential that we've lost the adaptability that we maybe would have had. Just because like we do there's our group, we like go barefoot walking in snow and share pictures and videos of our explicitly naked feet in Telegram. And I really think that like when you look at say rock climbers or any sportsman, the high level potential of a human being versus the average individual on the planet right now is like massively different. So maybe some of that is like us just losing track of our divinity in a way, like our pure adaptability that we kind of represent as the Mercury in between the plant and animal worlds, or the bridge between heaven and earth, whatever you want to call it.
We've gotten
yeah,
comfortable.
it's interesting. We also don't really move. We haven't got the capacity. We're all, you know, set up where we are. There's no sort of movement, and we don't sort of move with the seasons either. So there's probably lots of things. And I've always thought that maybe, you know, back in the day there was, you know, the environment was much different. I mean, we're talking about giants and showing evidence for these huge buildings that aren't built for our stature and things like that. I mean, the only thing I can think of and actually seeing that would be practical is actually looking at, you know, what's called electroculture, where you actually stimulate the growth of plants and things via electricity. So it's really just an interesting where we are in this cycle, and those sort of things come into play as well. But, you know, I'm getting off on a tangent, aren't I?
Oh no, you're good. I just had a kind of a brainstorm flash of realization. Like, was when the elders or rulers instituted the agricultural revolution, was that the original climate change lockdown? Because were they like, hey, you guys are eating all this shit, we need to like farm food now and no more nomadic wandering? And then we got way weaker and all kinds of problems ensued from that. So is that the original lockdown?
Well, and also I think that there's kind of a misunderstanding with the nomadic wandering. Also, with the you know, like people think when they say that these people just showed up and apparently food was just randomly everywhere wherever they went, you know, and they were just lucky like that, like manifest destiny style and shit. Um,
So it's more like Johnny Appleseed, just throwing
Right,
seeds
where-
out as you go.
Well, the thing is they understood how plants work, and while they might not have sat and farmed a field in the monoculture type cropping that we're doing today, that doesn't mean that in the areas that they wanted either the buffalo to come to or that they were going to stay in because the buffalo were there, they would take and promote those specific crops to grow in those areas. In
Well,
order
there's
to either
evidence to suggest the rainforests were not artificially, but artfully permacultured for humans to benefit from.
Like the terra
Well, there's-
preta type soils and those sort of things, and what they were doing to enhance those soils.
Yeah, I mean, I need
What
to
do you
do more
mean?
research about it, but it does have to do with the soils, as far as I know, and the biodiverse, just what would the word be? Saturation of life there. That it seems that it was set up and engineered is the right word for it, maybe. Like permaculture,
now,
Like, well, when
which
you're looking
supports
at
what Ben is
farming,
saying, but like the
these-
max level of that.
today farming is I don't want to get into a rant on this, but is super destructive.
Yeah.
It's
rant, Lucas.
every
Do it. Do it.
nah, man, it drives me wild because it's just like you're doing everything backwards. You just basically you're killing the soil and acting as if it's a medium, and this is not what you're supposed to do. What you're supposed to do is, increase the fertility, bring your soil to life. And it's the same thing that's happening everywhere. Do you know what I mean? It's no matter what aspect of this society you're looking at, same as the debt-based system, it's an anti-life system, and it's filtered down in every single aspect. And farming is one of those aspects that it's created profits over everything else except for increasing the life of the soil itself, and therefore the plants and everything else that comes from that. I mean, that should be your first port of call if you want to be a farmer or something like that, is like, what's my soil like? You know what I mean? And then from that, there's no telling of what humanity could be now based on, if we had decent farming practices and decent food to eat, that when you were eating that apple, it wasn't just growing so it looked fucking nice on a shelf and sat there for a month or put in a cool room for 6 months. That thing was living and full of strength and minerals and all the things that you needed. It's completely different, and so we're lacking in so many different qualities, subtle qualities, because of that.
Yeah, Ben, you should have the Jim Gale guy on. The Jim Gale. Jim Gale, the far. I mean, you probably have a lot of people on your list, but he might be an interesting one to do.
No,
Odin's
I'd
alchemy
actually
with.
been looking at. I'd actually been looking at him also.
Food Forest
and then I've
Abundance
got,
is his website.
and then I've been watching a couple of his shows. If you have his email, shoot it to me, please.
Yeah, easy. And we got to wrap this up. Actually, we're kind of past the
another
finish line.
person-
So
Another person. Oh, you just hold your pants on, Chance.
I was gonna say, yeah, you can finish your thoughts. What if I'm not wearing pants? You wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. Pants off, dance off. You do like dancing. But I was actually also looking at, to further what Lucas is saying, I wanted to get Elaine Ingram, and I'm going to contact her. She's not been on anybody's show, but I've taken her courses, and what she teaches is microbiology. So, and people want to fucking get so worked up about scientific stuff, but you know what? You jump on your little eBay. We all have these fucking apps. And like right here, real simple. This one's super nice, super nice. $183, 2000x. Your standard nice microscope. And she teaches a course that teaches you the difference between your beneficial bacteria and normal bacteria, your nematodes, all your different things in your soil. And that's also going to set your soil pH, because a lot of what your soil pH is coming from is the byproducts out of these different living organisms that are in the soil. And that's setting it, just like when you get fermentation in your stomach or something, because it's the difference between anaerobic and aerobic, and the food was supposed to break down through this bacteria, but now it's breaking down, fermenting actually. So it's understanding these bacteria and how they're going to break down. And she gives an entire course on how to look at that through a microscope. And once you start at that level, then the next level is just looking at animals, going in and looking at their fecal samples and their blood samples, and you're going to find more complexity than what you found in the soil material. That was basically the stomach of the plant and the excrement. Damn cat. They're just horrible about computers. That was the stomach of the plant, because that's what you've got to look at the soil as, is the stomach of the plant. Once you understand that, you just take that up and look at more complexity in the animal kingdom. And then once again with yourself, more complexity once again. But the same features are all going to be there, the same mechanics. You're going to have good bacteria, bad bacteria. Some things are going to break pieces down, which would look like a predatory bad thing. But some of those predatory things are actually beneficial, because you need it to break down and take away the old crap so new cells and better things can replace it. And that's one of the things you've got to learn with that balance. And in the soil, in the plant level, is where you're going to learn that the easiest. This is why alchemists use as above, so below. If you can understand it on a simple level, it's just a step up in complexity, but the same mechanics are still going to exist.
I love that. The stomach of the soil. The soil is the stomach of the plants. That's a really great metaphor. I hadn't heard that. But we got to wrap up. So you guys give me some finishing, closing thoughts. That's great. We can do another combo with you and Lucas anytime you guys want me to drive. I really enjoyed this. Really fun episode. I think the chat agrees. What we do after Vibe Rant, we go straight into, basically, it'll probably start about 20 minutes from now, 10:30 or so. We go straight into Flow State. Flow State is a live stream with me and other weaving spiders characters where we put our cameras on artwork that we're doing, and we do art at the same time as taking turns reading books to each other, and then waxing about the different information in the books. It's really great. So we stimulate right brain and left brain by doing creativity and listening to interesting shit. So it's always fun. We'll do that for a good couple hours after Vibe Rant is over. It'll be on the InnerVerse channel this time and Weaving Spiders YouTube, because Jim is busy rushing to finish a crazy awesome bronze sculpture and he can't host it tonight. So I'll be driving again, but Jim will be there. We'll have everybody we're used to seeing on the Flow State, I'm sure, and you guys can look for the link to join into that on Telegram if you want to be on stage and show your artwork, or just hang out and watch the YouTube channels for InnerVerse or Weaving Spiders to get into that live stream and just keep the party going tonight. Had to make that announcement though, and big thank you, Ben and Lucas, for showing us a good time tonight. This was extremely enlightening. Like, I'll want to go back and listen to parts of this again for sure, when I'm not a little distracted by all the bells and whistles of being host, because I learned some shit tonight. It's fun. I appreciate you guys both.
Thanks, Chance. Appreciate you having me on, mate.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing the InnerVerse episode and getting into a more in-depth, going through the cosmological dissenting that you've done from mainstream. I'm really into that idea.
Yeah. Awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, actually, Lucas and I should always record our conversations and then just like have somebody edit out the cool parts and put them together or whatever, because it's always excellent conversations. And we're always like, we should have recorded that. We very seldomly do.
Yeah, so if you join the flow state stream later in the chat and you want to join in on screen, just say so in the chat and we'll try to watch out for that. Anyway, I'm going to play us out with this song by Lucas to finish out this show. And this is not one with Marty Leeds, but it was selected by Jen Brew. She shared it in the Vibe Rant call-in line. So we'll enjoy this and rock out, do a dance off, pants on, dance on, whichever you want to do. Thanks for being here, guys, and see everyone on the flow state.
It's higher and higher.